Welcome back to AM Agenda. Over the weekend, we saw more angry scenes during protests of the decision to create 2 new detention facilities in WA and South Australia. Here are some of the views expressed in Northam in WA.
These people are illegal.
Gillard is the person I want. Gillard.
Well, go and see Gillard.
Gillard has no in her ivory tower.
Mike Kelly, people are obviously pretty angry over that decision. Will these protests make any difference, or is the decision to build a detention centre in Northam a done deal? And do you understand the community's feelings that they've been left out of any sort of consultation about this decision?
Well, I think it's understandable when you bear in mind there are 2 factors, I think, at play here. One is fear of the unknown, and secondly, of course, is the coalition's role that they've played in this, of stirring up public concern, of spreading misinformation about these people, of really pushing the scaremongering button on this whole issue. So it's understandable you're starting from a bad base whenever you're talking about asylum seekers. But certainly we're at the beginning of this process now, and in situations where we've seen these types of options exercised in the past, communities have come to appreciate that it's of economic benefit to their towns. We are talking about looking after children, after all, putting them in acceptable environments. Certainly the situation that adhered previously, and certainly during the Howard government, of putting kids behind razor wire was not something that I think any fair-minded Australian would like to see. But there will be economic benefits to communities from this activity. There is concern, I know, of whether this will put pressure on existing services, but the government has very clearly undertaken to ensure that all of the relevant services and necessary services will be provided to meet any extra demand that is generated by having these people in their communities.
Mitch Pfeiffer, is that what the coalition's doing, scaremongering over this issue? You'd rather new detention centres built, wouldn't you, than the overcrowding to continue on Christmas Island?
Yeah, look, we're not stirring this up, and I can understand why the local communities are concerned. They're concerned that they haven't been consulted. They're concerned that there might be pressure on the local infrastructure, and they're also concerned that we shouldn't need these facilities in the first place. The need for these facilities is evidence of the failure of this government's border protection and asylum seeker policies. When this government came into office, they started to soften their rhetoric in relation to asylum seekers. They abolished the temporary protection visas, and we no longer have the situation where all processing is automatically offshore. It's as a result of those factors that people smugglers have a good product to sell, and that's why we've seen in this year alone, 2010, we've seen 110 boats come to Australia, and we've seen over 5,500 people arrive by boat. Now that's a record for one calendar year, and by simply building new facilities, that is in no way going to deter the people smugglers from their trade. In fact, probably to the contrary, they're going to think, well, they're ready, willing to take more people from our boats. Now, obviously, we don't want to see overcrowding, but the best way to stop overcrowding is to take away the product that the people smugglers are selling.
Well, apparently the government's scheduled another meeting in Northam in WA next week, so I think we'll hear more on this issue then. Later this morning, we're going to be bringing you Tony Abbott's address to the Australian Industry Group. That's going to be live. Also, Joe Hockey will deliver a speech. He's calling for an inquiry into the banking system. Mike Kelly, do we need that sort of inquiry into the financial system, or are things fine the way they are?
Well, I think what we're seeing at the moment is the complete inability of the coalition to come to grips with economic issues, and poor old Joe Hockey's been pretty clearly voted off the island. Malcolm Turnbull's left him hanging out there. Tony Abbott hasn't backed him. We've certainly seen Don Randall passing pretty accurate commentary, calling it a lunatic fringe idea when he was discussing how he might deal with the banks. Certainly, I think it's been very clearly stated out there by all the credible commentators that the sort of flaky thought bubbles that have been floated by the opposition in these last couple of weeks certainly aren't in tune with sound economic principles.
So, Mike Kelly, there's no need for an inquiry? You think the financial system as it stands is working okay?
Well, certainly there's always a process by which the government will continue to analyse what actions or points of intervention might need to happen. The ACCC will look at issues. Graham Samuel has been talking today about looking at an inquiry in relation to price signalling. So there are things that we'll keep a close eye on, but with the APRA reforms and the previous reforms of the Hawke-Keating government, we're in a very sound position, probably the best position internationally in relation to our financial sector. And certainly our focus too is on continuing to improve the position of consumers, which is why we're trying to reinforce the situation in relation to these smaller lenders and of course giving consumers the possibility and the choice of moving around and eliminating the impositions of these expensive exit fees so they can shop around for cheaper mortgages.
But Mike Kelly, you said that the government will keep looking at these issues. Isn't a quick and the best way to do that is to have a proper inquiry so you've got all the information at hand?
Well, the government always has processes whereby it sits down with finance and with Treasury, with monitoring the circumstances that are going on. And the ACCC, as I mentioned, has its own processes whereby it keeps monitoring these situations. At this stage, we don't see the need for an inquiry. We are taking action to address the issues of improving the position of consumers and obviously the market regulation is much more viable in Australia than it has proven to be in many other places in the world through the GFC. So we've come out well ahead of the rest of the world. It's proved the basic underpinning soundness of our financial management.
Mitch Fifield, is it just populist bank bashing we're seeing from Joe Hockey in his calls for this inquiry today?
No, not at all. I mean, the point that Joe has been making over recent days is that banking licences are issued by the government on behalf of the Australian people and that there's a privilege which is attached to having a banking licence. When the Howard government was in office under Peter Costello, we introduced the Wallace Inquiry, and as a result of the Wallace Inquiry we engendered greater competition into financial services and also put in place very good prudential arrangements, which are one of the reasons why we came through the global financial crisis well. So I think the idea of a Wallace Mark II to look at better ways of improving competition in the banking sector is a good one. The other side of things that you've got to look at in this discussion, which is set against the backdrop of interest rate rises, is what the government can do today to help take upward pressure off interest rates. And the best thing this government can do, what they should do, is to stop borrowing money and to repay the debt. If the government did that, then that would make a contribution to lowering interest rates. That's what they should start doing.
Well, the Greens and Independents have expressed some support for the call for an inquiry, so it could actually be something that goes ahead without Labor's support. Just finally, before we do go, we've seen John Howard stirring the pot in recent days with his new book. The latest person to be offended this morning was Jeff Kennett, the former Victorian Premier. Mr Howard also in his book has opened up some old wounds with Peter Costello. Mitch Fifield, it doesn't help the party, does it? Reminding everyone of the internal divides and rehashing controversial times from the Howard government?
Well, I think people who've served in senior positions such as John Howard, such as Peter Costello, have every right to write their memoirs, and I think in doing so they're actually serving a community purpose and providing some good reference material for history. But look, the legacy of the Howard government is a shared legacy of John Howard and Peter Costello. Neither could have achieved what they did without the other, and I for one am going to spend every moment I can whenever that legacy is criticised defending it.
Mike Kelly, the Liberal Party isn't alone here. We all saw that spat between Paul Keating and Bob Hawke over Hawke's book a few months ago. Will you be picking up a copy of Mr Howard's book this week?
No, I don't have any trouble sleeping, so I think I'll leave that one alone. But look, you know, we're in the business of getting on with the here and now and trying to govern for the future of this country. So none of us are looking back over our shoulder. There's just too much in front of us at the moment, and we're getting on with it.
All right, well, David Spears will be interviewing John Howard tomorrow about his new book, so we can all look forward to that. Mike Kelly, Mitch Fifield, thanks for joining us this morning.
Cheers, Ashley.
Thanks, Ashley.
Cheers, Mitch.
And as I mentioned, we have a few live events coming up for you.